Today I learned that Samus Aran isn't the strong female character we all thought she was. No. She's clearly a strong trans female character. Samus Aran is trans. Whenever you bring this up, people will literally injure themselves trying to tell you why she isn't. Like, why is it so important to you that Samus Aran is cis? She's still a woman. Well, for starters, because that's what's accurate to the game developer's artistic vision. However, if she's still a woman regardless, then bothering to call her trans wouldn't even make much of a difference, now would it? Little known trans heroine, Samus Aran. Little known? I guess because the game series that she stars in isn't named after her. Fuck this trans misogynistic bastard, but I don't give a fuck, because canon trans lady Samus confirmed. This guy worked on the graphics. Do you really think he was involved with actually designing the character? But let's just ignore that, because even if it's trans misogyny, it still feeds our narrative. But think about it. Like, that's why Adam constantly calls Samus lady all the time. It's him trying to be the cool cis ally friend by acknowledging her identity, but accidentally coming off as a misogynistic asshole. Trans Samus canons are so beautiful. Like, she has to tuck because she's given a female standard issue Zero suit that's skin tight, because misogynist armor manufacturers. I didn't realize referring to someone as a lady was misogynistic. I guess I forgot to check my cis white male privilege on that one. Lady, more often than not, refers to a woman which is considered classy and respected, but perhaps the definition written by old white men has since been changed to more closely fit your personal agenda. And misogynistic armor manufacturers? Huh, maybe that's just the name of the company. MAM. Ma'am. Kind of funny that the acronym would be ma'am, isn't it? Anyway, good luck tucking anything in a suit like that. But perhaps we need to dig deeper. Maybe we need someone that clearly doesn't have a biased point of view to shove down our throats. Disregard canon, acquire representation. Samus Aran is a trans girl. Oh man, you can tell this article is going to be a clusterfuck of stupidity. Hello everyone, and welcome to another riveting installment of my column about getting representation in video games. For those who have forgotten, Disregard Canon, Acquire Representation is a column I have devised where I tell you which characters are queer, trans, disabled, mentally ill, or some other marginalized identity that does not get representation. And I base this off of my warped interpretations of the narrative presented to me. In some cases, I pick apart a character's narrative and give you all the cues that resonate with being trans, while other times I analyze their body language and vocal cues. But remember folks, there are no gender signifiers. However, there are also going to be times where I tell you to just live with it because your favorite characters are trans, and this is going to be one of those times. So buckle up everyone, and let's get ready for a wild ride. So basically, no matter what the evidence says, you're going to ignore it and tell us what's what. Sounds logical. Samus Aran is totally a trans girl. How could we possibly have missed it? I just don't know. Probably because she's not a trans girl. To start, she's huge and supposed to be built like a brick house as illustrated above. While short trans girls tend to exist, that's not to say they cannot be tall, and in fact, many trans women are usually really tall with regards to cis women. So are you saying cis women cannot be tall? Perhaps it's not common for a woman to be larger than a man, but it certainly does happen. Besides, if I remember correctly, Samus Aran was trained and enhanced by the Chozo alien's DNA. As well, the amount of muscle she has and her weight also lean toward her being trans, as that's especially common among trans women who transition later in life. Or, common for a woman raised by aliens that biologically enhanced her, and no, not with testosterone. Between all of that, there's also the fact that this is a science fiction universe, and it's not so far-fetched that transness could be detected early and Samus could have been given the proper chemicals, hormones, and body reconstruction to ensure she developed through childhood as feminine as possible. There's all sorts of ways for Samus to be trans, and it's really not that outlandish anyway. I'm sure that in a sci-fi universe teeming with alien pirates, the first concern of humanity is whether or not someone's biology matches with their gender identity. This isn't Tumblr in space. And no, it's not outlandish, but there's absolutely no mention of it anywhere in her origin story. As with Commander Shepard, it's very important to have action trans girls in our media, especially with Samus, being such a long-established character with many games under her belt and an almost universal level of recognition. She would be a great character for trans girl recognition. Why do these people always feel the need to change established characters to represent them? If you're looking for representation, go develop your own games and your own characters. If they're good games with well-written characters, they'll catch on. In the meantime, stop trying to piggyback off the success of already established franchises. And, in a universe where you've got evil humanoid lobsters, A giant semi-immortal pterodactyl monster, an energy-sucking jellyfish, this doesn't seem very unusual. In fact, there are many species, even on our own Earth, that can change gender at will, and this seems something fairly common in a large galaxy full of a variety of life forms, both sapient and not. But perhaps the most compelling argument for the necessity and normality of Samus being trans is that trans women exist now, and they exist doing all manner of awesome things in life. This degree of representation is really important and should be taken into special consideration. What does that have to do with anything, though? This is a fantasy world. It's science fiction and doesn't have to contain or represent everything in the real world unless it's somehow relevant to the story. Adam Malkovich is a strange character. First appearing in Metroid Fusion, Samus describes him as her gruff commanding officer. She also said that he makes a point of identifying her as Lady, a strange thing to take note of in this future, except maybe it's not so strange. When joining military forces, they get access to your medical records, and while they're kept a secret, maybe someone said something and Adam found out. Perhaps his calling her Lady started as more a bitter, perhaps sarcastic comment surrounded by air quotes. Maybe Adam is a transphobe, and his calling her Lady, his restricting her equipment in Other M, and when he even stuns her to go on his glorious death march, maybe all of those are expressions of transphobia. And perhaps this entire article is an outright expression of stupidity. Or maybe Lady was a nickname because she was the only female? It's quite a reach to paint it as transphobic because once again, there is absolutely no evidence outside of one graphic designer's off-color joke that Samus is anything but female. This addresses two issues, one being transphobia and the other being Stockholm Syndrome and regarding your abuser as a good person worthy of respect. The actions Adam takes throughout the game are wholly unnecessary and ultimately are him abusing Samus psychologically and in the end even physically, putting her life in danger and threatening the safety of the mission. Perhaps his heroic sacrifice was him realizing that he's an awful person and deciding to do some good with his last breath. Or maybe it's him realizing he's an awful person and doing something so that he'd be remembered as a good person after his death. That she later thinks of him as a respectable person isn't unusual. Most people maintain a positive view of abusers long after they've cut contact with them. It's common that trans women face abuse. That a strong trans woman faces abuse and is still presented as strong for it is incredibly important. Well, a way to try and twist a man's sacrifice to be all about himself and not at all about the person whom he sacrificed himself for. I would argue he cared for her and in the end came through in showing it in a big way, but what do I know? This is later featured in Metroid Fusion as well, and I'm actually a bit confused because I could have sworn many people disliked Other M because it made Samus look like a weakling and anything but a strong woman. In short, Samus is already an amazing character and would be made, 10 times more so if she were a trans woman. She's a strong intergalactic bounty hunter who frequently defeats horrifying evils, so being trans isn't the most unrealistic thing about her life. Never mind that trans women have done amazing things in reality already. We exist, we're fantastic, and we deserve representation that's just as fantastic as we are. Right, because whether you are trans or not has everything to do with how amazing of a person you are. Well, if you're really out there doing incredible things, then the merit of your work will speak for itself, and you won't keep inserting your gender identity into your Twitter bios and Patreons and such. So, as the column's name goes, I am disregarding your canon and acquiring representation. Samus Aran is a trans girl, and there's nothing you can do about it. Actually, Samus is a woman. A biological woman, because that's how her creators made her. In the first Metroid, they intentionally misled players into believing Samus was a man until the very end, when they revealed that all along they were playing as a woman. Samus is an example of a strong female character that often gets ignored when certain people are trying to paint the narrative of lack of female characters in video games. They conveniently forget that one of the first early Nintendo titles featured one such character. Samus is a female character that anyone of any gender can enjoy playing as because her games are well made. Diverse, as much as online activists have made me despise that word, characters can be a good thing, but to insert them just for the sake of representation is silly, and it's even more so to change already established characters into something they were never intended to be. Samus is a woman, and there's nothing you can do about it, because that's the reality. Ignore it as much as you want, but your cry for representation can't change the facts.